1918年至1919年的流感大流行，俗称西班牙流感，是近代历史上最为严重的卫生灾难。而100年后的今天， COVID-19 冠状病毒所带来的全球大流行病，同样将人类打得措手不及。随着近代科学和医学的迅速发展，以及人们对于生命健康的越发重视，生物科技公司被人们给予了厚望。去年，诸多的生物科技公司由于在新冠疫苗上的突破，走入了大众的视野，诸如美国的 Moderna、辉瑞，德国的 BioNTech、英国的阿斯利康等。今天走进我们节目的来自加拿大的 Better Life Pharma 公司，也是一家在2020年生物科技领域迅速发展的新星。Hi, Ahmed. It's very glad to have you here with us today by the Zoom interview. And for those who is not familiar with you and the Better Life Pharma, so could you please briefly introduce yourself and the company?
Sure. Thank you. My name is Ahmed Darudian. I am in Vancouver, British Columbia, in Canada. I have over 30 years experience in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry. My background is as a scientist. I have a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences, focusing on pharmacokinetics and metabolism of drugs. But most of my career has been in building companies from scratch and capitalizing them, bringing the right management board, and advancing projects that are scientifically sound and commercially viable and make money for the investors.
Yeah, and before the interview, we mentioned about the COVID-19, and actually the COVID-19 pandemic makes people know the significance of keeping healthy and the importance of biotech companies like your company. And actually, many biotechs like Pfizer, Gilead were well known this year, like last year in 2020. So what does 2020 mean for your company?
2020 was a very strange, different year, as with every other company. But our company, previous to that, for 3 years, we were working on an antiviral drug called interferon, a topical form of interferon alpha 2b, for the treatment of HPV virus. This is another virus that causes cervical cancer in women. It causes bad infection. So interferon is a very potent antiviral agent, and our group was developing this cream so that when applied in women, it can get rid of the HPV infection. And HPV has had a vaccine for 14 years, and the prevalence of the virus is still, 5.5 million new cases in the United States last year. So the virus is not gone away. Even vaccine has been around for 14 years. Beginning of the year of 2020, we were aware COVID came very quickly. We looked at, effects of interferon alpha 2b, previous literature and clinical work. Can that be applied to treat COVID? And very early on, it was clear to us that we can use our expertise in developing a different formulation of interferon alpha 2b, instead of a cream, to use it in an inhalation form applied directly to the lungs. So in a nebulized format. Fortunately for us, a study very early on out of Wuhan, China, run by Canadian researchers, Dr. Eleanor Fish out of Toronto General, showed that if you apply interferon in a nebulized format directly to the lungs in the early stages of COVID, you can significantly reduce the effects of COVID, and the viral load goes down. And 77 patients in Wuhan, they all recovered. So we very quickly brought that team. Dr. Fish joined us, our group, and the last most of 2020, we spent developing that formulation, and we are excited to be able to develop a treatment for COVID-19.
That's very exciting. And as an emerging biotech company, so no matter focusing on, like you mentioned, HPV virus or COVID-19 virus, what main candidates on the pipeline?
The main candidates are as I mentioned, what we call AP003, which is nebulized in inhalation form of interferon alpha 2b. Before that is another format, which is the cream, which was our original product for the HPV treatment. And just recently, we acquired a psychedelic compound, BOL148, which is a non-hallucinogenic form of LSD that has been shown to help patients with depression and so on. So our pipeline is quite rich this year, and we're excited to develop these three compounds in the coming year.
Yeah, and you mentioned the AP003 and the potential COVID-19 treatment and prevention. So I was wondering, what do the Pfizer vaccine and the Better Life Pharma have in common, and where's the difference?
Right. So vaccines are fundamentally different than treatments. Vaccine is when you don't have the COVID-19 infection. So you take it because you don't want to get it. And obviously, we encourage people to get vaccinated. We are scientists. We believe in vaccination, and we think people should be vaccinated. So there is no direct comparison because people would get vaccinated. But as I mentioned to you, for example, for HPV, there has been a vaccine for 14 years. And still globally, there's millions and millions of cases of HPV infection every year. So our plan is to develop our treatment in collaboration, if you will, complementary to vaccine. So people who don't get vaccinated for some reason, or the vaccine doesn't work on them, or the virus comes back, these are all unknown questions when you talk about vaccination. So we believe that while vaccination will work in a great majority of the people in the world, there will be need for treatment in the coming years and decades.
And you mentioned about the HPV viruses. Actually, recent years, Chinese people started to be careful about HPV virus. So will your products go into Chinese market?
Yes, absolutely. We have been in touch with some colleagues in China and some groups that have shown, we have data from China, and we know about the understanding of HPV in China and the interest of Chinese medical community in developing a treatment for HPV. So our plans will be focused in countries like China, where HPV vaccination and treatment hasn't been as long in some of the Western countries like US, Western Europe, and Canada.
That's awesome. And Better Life has started to be traded on OTCQB last year, since September 2020. So for investors, what are Better Life's investment highlights?
Well, I think investment highlight, this is a great opportunity for investors to invest in our company, what we call at the right stage, because we have spent last 2-3 years working on these compounds, de-risking our plans. So this year is our clinical year. This is a year that we show from the proof of concept that has been established, how we actually dose patients, generate data, and then look towards a commercialization plan and partnerships with groups, larger groups, for the next stage, like groups in either in North America or in Asia, China, and other places. So 2021 is a transformational year for us, and we plan to uplist on NASDAQ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and more specifically, like, if there anything we can expect, and what's the blueprint for the whole year, like in 2021?
The plan for 2021 is starting a pre-IND meeting with the FDA for our psychedelic TD-0148 for the treatment of depression, an IND meeting for the AP003 for the treatment of COVID and SARS-related type viruses. That will be, both of these would be phase, for psychedelic would be phase 1, and for the AP003 would be phase 2 program. And for HPV, we want to restart that. There's a lot of human clinical data. So towards the third quarter, we want to initiate a phase 2-3 type meeting with the FDA to start that clinical trial for the HPV treatment.
That's good. And I found your company just announced the formation of next generation psychedelic research advisory board. So could you please expand more on that?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, psychedelics are very interesting, and we think there's a huge market globally on the treatment of mental disorders. And this opportunity with the new group that we have brought into our team with a compound that we call next generation. And what all that means is we want to treat these illnesses, mental illnesses, with analogs of LSD, like LSD type molecules that show the treatment without the hallucinogenic effects. So for example, right now, most of these companies that are developing psychedelic compound, it has to be done with the clinician, with the therapist, because of hallucinogenic effects. But our compound does not have the hallucinogenic effects. You can actually dispense it from the pharmacy. So we envision an analog of LSD, like an LSD type molecule, with that type of powerful effect on the indication like depression, without hallucinogenic effect that causes unwanted side effects.
And last, is there anything you want to say through the interview to our audience, and including the Chinese investors, U.S. investors, and other global investors?
Yeah, I think this is in some sense, we can create a huge upside opportunity for the investors coming into our company, because this is a year of biotech. This is a year of innovation in this space, with much needed indications such as depression and HPV and COVID.
And thanks so much for the interview, and look forward to more news from Better Life.
Yes, thank you very much.